Axes and Lightning, A Leader's Path. A short story by Rowson. Part 1. A crowd of hoghers gathered in a large circle in the center of the village, which primarily consisted of huts made of animal skin and bones of large beasts. Their attention was entirely on two hoghers in the center, who glared at each other with deadly intensity, each gripping their axes that gleamed in the midday sun. You killed my brother. You will pay, Tarith. Your brother killed my father, and you can join him in hell, Garton. Your father shouldn't have stolen from my brother's farm. Your brother should have paid my father. Your entire family are scoundrels with no honor. That's enough. Garton's green face flushed red. Now you die. Garton and Tarith charged each other at that instant. Their axes each met with a reverberating clang that could be heard throughout the entire valley. Then another one. Then a third time, this one with slightly less intensity, as it became equally entrenched in the deadly melee. You're weak. Pathetic, Garton growled. That's not what your mom said, Tarith retorted. Garton only turned redder as he attempted to break Tarith's guard with brute force alone, but Tarith parried, turning Garton's axe sideways. Tarith then attempted to swing at Garton's head, but Garton was ready for this, and ducked slyly, while bringing his own axe to meet Tarith's. The two of them glared at each other as their axes were locked against each other, each one attempting to overpower the other with brute strength, but to no avail, as the two proud warriors were evenly matched. That's enough! A lightning bolt crackled through the air, connecting with the union of axes. The electricity, surging through the axes, instantly caused both hoghers to yelp with discomfort, and then drop the axes before collapsing on the ground, unable to move, but still able to grunt insults at each other. Stop this fighting at once! The crowd around the two belligerent hoghers parted to let the shaman that sent that lightning bolt at them through. No more death feuds. We need every single hogher warrior alive and well. We cannot afford to be weak. Those humans will take this valley from us if we are weak. One of the crowd members stepped forward, as though to challenge the shaman's authority. But we've always settled things with blood feuds. This is the way it's been for forever. I know that, the shaman roared back. But we need to hold this valley. The humans are coming, and there are too many of them. We need to negotiate peace with them. We need them to see that we are more than just beasts. The shaman paused. This is why, from this day forward, you will not carry axes when there's no enemy present. Blood duels are banned. You're mad, Grimtar, the disobedient hogher replied. We're hoghers. Who cares what the humans think of us? They'll hate us anyway. You question my wisdom? Grimtar responded. I have foreseen what will happen. The humans are a threat. They outnumber us. They will win. Yet, if we remain patient and make peace with the humans, I will not abandon my ways for the humans. Me either. My ox stays with me at all times. The crowd began to become restless and unruly. Some hoghers on the other side yelled back. Listen to Grimtar. He is wise. Grimtar is our leader, not you. The unruly hoghers to the right of the shaman drew their axes. So did the ones to the left. Grimtar looked on worriedly. Was there any way to prevent their destruction, one way or another? He was certain of the prophecy he had envisioned. The humans were coming. Their arcane scryers may have already been watching. Yet if he could not get the hoghers to agree on his drastic decrees, he knew they would all perish. The shaman pondered this as his guard stepped forward in preparation to defend him. There was nothing he could do. Nothing, that is, unless he was willing to do something rather unsavory. He did not know if his guards would remain loyal to him, but he had no choice. The shaman channeled with all his might, tapping into the deepest forces of nature, as the whole village started to fight each other. Lightning crackled around him, and a dark cloud began to form overhead. Raindrops began to beat down furiously on the village. Then, a loud crack and flash of lightning overtook everyone. Everyone fell to the ground, stunned, with the exception of the two guards beside Grimtar. Take their axes! Now! Grimtar bellowed at the guards. The guards looked at Grimtar with pure abject fear in their eyes, but they obeyed him nonetheless. They knew his power. The guards relieved the stunned hogher warriors of their axes and placed all of them in the shaman's hut. Grimtar had saved the village, for now. Yet, at what cost? Part 2. Several men were gathered around a table with maps and multicolored figures strewn upon it. Several more maps hung on the walls of the windowless stone room. At the head of the table sat a man with a gold-bejeweled crown. "Your Majesty, our magi have scryed for information, and they report the hoghers have settled here." The man to the left of the king, dressed in scholarly robes and sporting a monocle, pointed at the map, arranging some green figures on it. "Right next to the outlying village is Finby. This is where the hoghers pillaged the farms." The man sitting at the monarch's right shoulder spoke next. He wore a tabard with a red griffin emblazoned on it. "That village is located on flat land with open plains on 3 sides. It will be difficult and costly to defend. We believe the best course of action is to go on the offensive and clear the hoghers first from Deerfold. We will secure the hill beside Svinby here, under the cover of darkness, positioning our artillery as follows." The man laid out some wooden replica artillery on the map. "Then, we position our battle mage platoon here, in this stand of trees. This will hopefully obscure and protect them. Then our main force will arrive at the break of dawn, and all 3 positions will advance at once. Additional cavalry will encircle the village to cut off retreats." Wooden representations of all of the soldiers were placed on the table, each with a satisfying click. The monarch paused to contemplate. "Advisor Bennett and General Fordreek, you're certain of this? I don't want any more casualties than necessary. These are real men, with families, not some pawns on a board." Advisor Bennett and General Fordreek nodded eagerly. "But what about the peace deal?" A man in a green robe spoke up from further down the table. "The hoghers sent a delegation from the tribe of Kilgalesh. High Shaman Grimtar wishes to sue for peace. Shouldn't we consider that?" "Pah! Peace? After they murdered innocent farmers, how can you even think of peace, Diplomat Forsyth?" General Fordreek growled in disbelief. "Well, we did also poison their watering hole and set fire to their fields," Forsyth replied, and he turned to stare at a dark-haired, mustached mage with red robes. The man only smiled at Forsyth. "Have you no honor, Elias?" "Have you considered that weakening their strength saves the lives of our own?" Elias replied coolly. "Even if they are hoghers, it's cruel. To target their women and children? You lack honor. It's not who we are. It's not the way," replied Forsyth. "So what?" Fordreek slammed the table, rattling the wooden figurines. "That's enough bickering," the king yelled, slamming the table even harder than Fordreek. "We do need to consider peace as an option." "But, King Aureus, they're hoghers. Peace is not in their nature. They'll attack us anyway," Fordreek grumbled. "Enough, Fordreek. The kingdom of Tarith has always attempted peace before resorting to war, no matter the enemy. We will meet them at Deerfold. We will negotiate peace." "Yes, Your Majesty," Fordreek conceded heavily. "It's a trap," Advisor Bennett mumbled. Mage Elias remained quiet, his face emotionless. Part 3. Mage Elias and 2 other men stood within the top room of a tall, circular tower made of white bricks. The room had shelves lining the walls, each filled to the brim with books. 4 windows, one in each cardinal direction, overlooked the city of Griffin Rock. Moonlight filtered through these windows, landing on a blue orb sitting on top a black metal stand in the middle of the room. Little particles swirled around inside the orb, reminding one of a star-filled sky. One of the men was peering into the orb carefully. "I see... Yes, this is the hogher village. I see... There's a bunch of them, gathered around a fire in the center."
"Well, what are they doing? Are they preparing for war? Are they busy killing each other? What of it, Sia?"
Elias asked demandingly. No, they're just Sitting, the seer responded.
Last time you were able to see them, they were busy fighting. They all had axes. Is there any indication that they're getting ready for war?
I don't see any axes at all. They're just sitting. Looks peaceful. Should I let the king know about this in my report?
No. Say nothing.
But
you're just a rookie. You wouldn't understand.
A sullen atmosphere befell the hogher village as the day turned into night. The hoghers had gathered around the center of the village again, although some were absent, and it was still much quieter than usual. Some hoghers were still in their huts.
I can't believe Grimtar would do something like this,
one hogher muttered to his wife inside one of the huts. His wife simply shrugged. There must be some kind of reason for it.
He just wants to control us. He wants all the power for himself,
the hogher grumbled.
Besides, Argotha, this is not our way. Hoghers are always ready for battle, not like humans, sitting around and playing games and drinking tea all day long.
Well, it is also our way to listen to the High Shaman, Argotha replied. Besides, Rock, there's nothing we can do.
Well, I won't stand for this,
Rock grumbled. Please don't do anything rash, Argotha pleaded. He'll get banished from the village. They already threatened Tangarth and Garton with banishment, and they flogged Drakor for hiding a sword.
Huh! First we can't have any blood feuds, then we can't have any weapons. Now he wants to limit our grog and demand we pick up trash. What's next? Is he going to demand for us to dance in front of him like bards and minstrels?
Argotha said nothing, only giving Rock a troubled look. Part 4. Later that night, from within a much larger, much more elaborate building than the simple huts the rest of the hoghers had, Grimtar sat in his chamber by himself. The room was decorated with various animal skins, elaborate masks, and carved totems on the walls, and there was a bed draped with luxurious fine furs. A simple shelf held a few jars with odd ingredients, like yimp tails and theltrial spores. What seemed out of place for the hogher shaman was a neatly built bookshelf filled to the brim with books that were written by humans. A book titled The Secrets of Diplomacy protruded slightly from its neighbors. On the floor in another corner of the room, a small cauldron simmered over a fire. Grimtar poured a strange concoction into the cauldron, adding some dried herbs and mushrooms. A sickly green vapor issued from the cauldron as Grimtar began to stir. The mixture within the pot swirled, and eventually, images began to materialize on its surface. Green smoke billowed around Grimtar, enveloping him, and through it, he could see a warping, distorted image of his village. It seemed peaceful, but behind the village, off in the distance, he could make out storm clouds gathering and growing in size. Grimtar watched as the clouds came closer and closer, eventually arriving at the village, not only covering the sky in darkness, but tinting the whole scene with a dark gray. He continued to watch, but the only thing that happened was the storm clouds darkening and covering over the entire village until the outlines of the clouds were barely visible at all.
This is not good, Grimtar pondered to himself. Last time it was perfectly clear. The humans would see us as a threat to themselves and attack us with overwhelming numbers. The only way to avoid this was to convince the humans we were not a threat. But this time, the visions from the spirits aren't clear. Nothing is clear.
Grimtar paced around, expression troubled.
Maybe I need to give this up. Maybe I need to give my people back their weapons. Maybe I need to give up trying to get us to behave more like humans. But as soon as I do, I'm certain they'll take my power. They will kill me. Just like Gromoth after he sold us out to the Zilv Natha. Just like Jor after he gave up Krajduel to the Rookshami. No, I can't give up. What must they be thinking? I should not have used my power in such a way. This is wrong. Oroth did not deserve that beating.
Grimtar continued to debate himself.
But this is for the greater good. This is to save the village. Not just this village, but every village. Peace is better than war. Peace is better for us. Perhaps copying the humans more is a good idea. We can learn from them.
Grimtar eventually retired to a fitful and restless sleep, interrupted constantly by his suspicion and fear of his own people. The morning sun scoured the saffron-colored field. Its blades of grass swayed in a slight breeze. In the distance, the fortress of Castelia could be seen, its impressive spires and surrounding walled city reduced to a mere purple silhouette against the horizon. On the other side of the field, a plume of smoke could be made out faintly before the terrain vanished into the background of high mountain peaks. Two groups were converging on the center of this field. The humans from the kingdom of Tarith, led by King Aureus himself, approached on the back of impressive stallions adorned with shining armor. The Kilgalish tribe of hoghers, led by High Shaman Grimtar, approached riding massive Nakru, whose saber-toothed tusks protruded fiercely from their mouths. The human monarch was accompanied by his small cabinet of advisors, General Fordreek, Advisor Bennett, Diplomat Forsyth, and Sorcerer Elias Wandermere, as well as several armed pikemen. High Shaman Grimtar was accompanied by a few armed guards in rare black iron armor. The metal was decorated with tusks and teeth, creating an especially intimidating silhouette. Two younger shamans, one dressed in blue robes over his chainmail, and the other dressed in identical red, were also present. The two groups slowed as they drew closer to each other. Once they were within hailing distance, both leaders dismounted. The respective processions of officials and guards remained on their beasts, however.
Greetings. I am Aureus, sovereign of the kingdom of Tarith. I am Grimtar, leader of the Kilgalish tribe.
There was an awkward pause, filled only by the snorting and soft growling of the animals.
We have received your delegation and are willing to negotiate an armistice,
Aureus finally said. The hoghers looked at each other with the uncertainty associated with unfamiliarity. The humans, meanwhile, remained still and faced forward with steely glances. The horses seemed to match their riders' expressions. Grimtar spoke.
We wish to make peace. We simply wish to exist in this valley here, raise our families, and live off the land. A drought and a famine struck our native homeland in Petaklik, and we have been forced to migrate ever since. We traveled to Krajadul, but the Rookshami chased us out. So we settled here, unaware of any claims to this land. All I ask is for us to remain here, and I, on the behalf of my people, wish to apologize for our misunderstanding and anything we have done to harm your people.
Aureus paused before responding, his face transfixed in a pensive expression, frozen as though time itself had stopped in that moment. He spoke slowly, each word chosen carefully.
I understand. However, the men of Tarith have reservations about trusting you after the damage done by the Zilvnathal's armies. How will you assure us of your peaceful intentions? We have brought tribute. Fine furs procured by our skilled hunters, and ivory figures handcrafted by our artisans,
Grimtar responded, signaling his procession to bring forward the satchels of goods. He opened one bag and produced a large, intricately crafted figure. Aureus seemed slightly interested, but the men behind him remained unimpressed.
I see. The beast that came from had to have been massive.
Out of another satchel, Grimtar produced the brilliant red furs that had been decorating his personal chambers, as well as the spotted hides that had been the covers of his bed. Aureus simply nodded, pausing once again to meticulously choose his words.
Those must have been challenging to acquire, but this is not enough. You must understand. The people who live here at my kingdom's edge are terrified. People from Svinby, Haven, and Deerfault have all come to me requesting protection. To put it mildly, your people have transgressed against them.
General Fordreek's face turned red at the mention of Deerfault. It took tremendous will for the man to suppress the urge to speak out of turn and curse at the hoghers, but he could not suppress an angry glare.
Very well. I also have some gold to give you.
Grimtar gestured to the hoghers behind him. One of them tossed a sack through the air that jingled when Grimtar caught it. The hogher leader pulled a single coin out of the bag to show that it was real.
There's plenty more where that came from, too.
How much gold do you have? The monarch asked, squinting at the coin.
Hey, wait a minute. You looted these coins from our villages. Yes, and we are giving them back,
Grimtar declared, as the hogers behind him scowled and shifted restively. Aureus paused again. Silence filled the air. Grimtar's face remained calm despite the nerves churning in his gut. Everyone else's expressions ranged from, "Can we get this over with?" to, "Is this guy serious?"
I want to make peace with you. I really do, but my men are still angry. Our villagers have lost their animals and their property, and several have lost their families. They thirst for revenge, as I'm sure all of you can understand. As the leader and representative of Tarith, I cannot yet accept,
Aureus declared.
I will need more. We don't have much else, plied Grimtar quickly. We can give you back everything we took. We can give you the offerings here, but we don't have much else. We lost some of our own as well, both from battle and from a mysterious sickness that recently passed over the village. Women and children fell to it too.
Elias could not avoid a slight smirk at that last sentence. The king replied nearly instantly this time.
Peace alone is not enough. I need to ensure that this won't happen again in the future. I need you and your people to remember this agreement, and I will need continuous proof that you have not forgotten.
His stern tone then softened.
I understand you may not have much right now, but surely you will have more later. Your skilled hunters can guarantee that.
Aureus paused.
I will need exactly as much as you brought now to be delivered to the kingdom every month. Should you fail to deliver, we shall attack you with the might of the combined armies of our vast kingdom. Warriors from all across the land shall be rallied. Our magi shall rain fire down upon you, and our griffin riders will hunt you across the plains. Now, do we have an agreement?
Grimtar bowed his head low.
I accept.
Advisor Bennett handed Aureus a decorated scroll, which the king unrolled and presented to Grimtar, along with an elaborate white quill.
Sign here. This quill is enchanted and will write without ink. I hope that I am not making a mistake by giving you a chance.
Part 5.
Are you seriously going to let them get away with this?
That piece of yours is an embarrassment. Are you really that afraid of these puny humans? Such dishonor! Such cowardice!
Silence! All of you!
Grimtar bellowed over the heads of the complaining hogers.
What you do not understand is that, right now, we have no choice. Our tribes and warbands are scattered throughout the lands because our old home became uninhabitable. It would take weeks to unite a force large enough to oppose the human armies. We may be stronger than they are, but there are many, many more of them. It is either we cooperate for now, or we get ripped to shreds by their griffins and incinerated by their unnatural sorcery. I would rather die than bow down to puny humans. Why do you think the gods sent famine and pestilence to our lands?
Grimtar snapped.
That was divine punishment. We have, for far too long, been at war with every other race on Talmanor. We mercilessly terrorized them. Now, no one will accept us in their lands. The gods have sent us a message, and that message is that they disapprove of our ways. Not this again.
One of the hogers rolled his eyes. Grimtar and his procession returned to the hogger village. The hogers there were conducting their usual daily routines. Hogger children chased each other around the fields carefree. Hunters were planning their next expedition. Smiths were busy, despite the ban on weapons, and farmers were tending their fields. The hogers Grimtar had assigned to keep order, ones that had always been loyal to him, were patrolling the village, their armor making clinking sounds with each step as they moved between each of the huts and around the borders of the fields, watchful for anyone disobeying Grimtar's commands. Everything seemed quiet as Grimtar made his way to the center of the settlement. As he passed by, the other hogers stopped what they were doing to stare at him. The high shaman ignored them. He crossed to the impressively large drum in front of his home and proceeded to bang on it.
"Attention!"
he bellowed in a commanding voice. The huge drums caused nearby birds to scatter, so deep and resonant were they. The other hoghers all immediately dropped what they were doing and gathered around the large fire pit at the center of the village, all eyes on him.
"I have met with the humans. We will have peace," declared Grimtar.
There was some soft applause and cheering, but far from the usual fanfare when a high shaman spoke.
"However, we will need to gather more loot from the beasts and give it to the humans to maintain this new peace."
The crowd instantly erupted in jeers and booing.
"You want to give our loot to the humans?"
came a shout from the crowd.
"Why don't you leave and go live with the humans instead if you love them so much?" "Silence!"
Grimtar boomed, before striking the drum with ferocity, sending an intense reverberation that drowned out the discontented din of the crowd. Instantly, there was quiet enough in the village to hear the distant cawing of crows in the fields.
"I know these are not our ways, but we have no other choice but our own oblivion. For far too long, we have been prideful and arrogant. We have inflicted the same terror onto the other races of Talmanar as the humans have been inflicting on us. The gods have denied us the rains, and have smote us with plagues, scattering us to the four winds. We do not have nearly the army to stand up against the humans, and we would not be able to gather such an army any time soon. Our ways have failed us. It is time for a change. Though we may not like the humans, they have a truly prosperous and mighty kingdom, and we could stand to learn from them how to build a kingdom of our own. This day is the start of a new era of prosperity, and I will lead us there. We will have our own mighty palaces. No more small, dirty huts. Our harvest will be bountiful. We hoghers will live long enough to see our children grow up and their children's children grow up. No longer shall we be bound to live and die by the axe."
The crowd responded with subdued applause and murmurs. It was at that point Grimtar noticed a handful of his guards were missing. Thinking he would have to deal with them later, he continued.
"Today is the day we shall regain the favor of the gods. Today we exchange our axes for picks and begin gathering the stone to build a palace. Today—"
Grimtar was cut off by a sharp,
"Look out!"
He turned around to see his own shaman apprentice with his hands crackling, halfway through a spell, his red robes fluttering in the wind. Grimtar's loyal bodyguard jumped in front of the incoming spell. White-hot lightning coursed through him, causing his hair to stand on end. He dropped his axe in pain, both because it had become red with heat and because his muscles painfully spasmed with electrocution. He collapsed face down into the dirt. Instantly, Grimtar readied his own lightning bolt. Chaos ensued as the other members of Grimtar's guard ran to their leader's aid, only to be blocked by turncoat guards charging back at them. Grimtar's other apprentice, clad in blue, remained loyal to him, and attacked the traitorous spellcaster with a blazing fist, which the red shaman dodged. The crowd behind them erupted into anarchy. The guards were too busy fighting one another to subdue the violence among the villagers. Hoghers pelted each other with fists, rocks, and anything they could pick up and use as a weapon. Several of them tried to rush Grimtar, only to be grabbed and thrown back by others. Grimtar's lightning spells interrupted when a stone hit him right in the hand, causing the lightning bolt to release prematurely and go off course, striking a building behind the High Shaman's house and setting it ablaze. Grimtar then decided to make a run for it and escape the bedlam. He did not know who he could trust among the rioting hoghers, but he knew he'd be safer with any potential enemies on only one side of him. The crowd behind him was breaking loose. Several hoghers were charging him. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted one of his missing guards. By the looks of him, the hogher had broken into the weapons stash and was carrying as many illegal axes as he could in a bundle. Grimtar shook his head and dashed the other way as fast as his aging legs could carry him, but he soon found his exit cut off by the other missing guards.
"You are mad, Grimtar, and it is time to get rid of you,"
shouted one.
"Kneeling before humans? You are a coward. You dishonor the tribe."
"Death before dishonor."
The 3 traitorous guards charged him, their faces red with rage. Grimtar noticed they were redder than usual, even for hoghers, and moved particularly fast for being clad in full metal armor. Thinking quickly, he placed his palm on the ground, his eyes glowing green. Instantly, thick, gnarled tree roots burst forth from the earth in front of the traders, causing all three of them to trip. They landed on their faces, their own momentum spinning them several feet forward to land right at the feet of Grimtar. More hoghers appeared in the gap between the huts that Grimtar planned to escape through. They, too, had broken into the weapon stash and now bore axes. The three he had tripped were also quickly returning to their feet. Grimtar had only one place to run now, his shaman hut. An arrow whizzed past his head as he turned to the door of his home, the seat of power for the entire tribe. Grimtar jumped through and slammed the door behind him, only to have the edge of an axe pierce through the wooden door with a deafening crash that shook the whole building. The shaman flinched, as though it had actually struck his flesh. He knew the door would not hold long, so he desperately channeled more magical energy into the ground. The wooden floorboards burst open with thick, thorny bramble bushes, reinforcing the door, even as the axe continued work on it like it was made of paper. Grimtar stumbled from the front room into the audience chamber, and then into his private quarters, panting heavily. Thunderous bangs against the door could be heard over the din of the battle outside. He knew he could only hold them off for so long, and although he had acquired tremendous magical power through decades of practice, his time-worn body could only handle so much spellcasting, much less running. Yet maybe, just maybe, it would be long enough, he thought. Desperately, he dashed to his shelf of spellcasting ingredients. His hands trembled as he grabbed a jar containing crushed purple herbs. The pounding on the building caused the jars to dance on the shelf with each impact, and he fumbled a couple to the floor. Another jumped, crashed to the ground, and shattered from an especially violent strike on the door. Grimtar hurriedly emptied the herbs into his cauldron and began to stir. Purple smoke emanated from it as he added to the blaze with his own channeled fire magic. Outside, over the din of battle, yelling could be heard.
"I always knew you were a traitor, Garton!" "Huh! You side with Grimtar! I always knew you were yellow with cowardice, just like him!" "Coward? I was just about to run you through!" "Well then, it's time we finish what we started last moon! Time to die, Tongarth!"
Both of the old rivals charged each other, weapons drawn, right outside Grimtar's chamber. But Grimtar was too focused on creating his potion to appreciate the irony of the situation. He was also too focused to notice that the pounding on the door had stopped. Furthermore, the intense, overpowering smell of the purple haze masked the scent of burning wood and thatch.
"Grimtar shall die a coward's death,"
yelled the red-robed shaman as he struck the shaman hut repeatedly with lightning bolts. Other hoghers began lobbing lit torches onto the roof of the hut and through the windows. Soon, the whole building was ablaze. As the inferno grew, sparks from the fire began to spread to nearby dwellings. A plume of thick black smoke drifted upward. Grimtar's hut was consumed utterly, in flames. The red hogher stepped over dead hoghers as he proceeded to the center of the village, some hours after the rebellion. He struck the massive heavy drum, which was now on the ground on its side, its skin miraculously still intact after the earlier fires. He began to shout as the surviving hoghers gathered in the center of what remained of the village.
"I am Warlord Qatar, the new High Shaman," he called. "Tonight, by my orders, we shall take the fight back to the humans."
His voice was drowned out by a rising roaring cheer of the hoghers.